the Possibility series. My name is Camilla Banda. I'm an entrepreneur, mental health advocate, and a politician. The Possibility series looks at the part that young people can play with regards to the economic development and advancement of our wonderful country, Zambia. Today, we are joined by an amazing young woman. She's an entrepreneur and she is also the co-founder of Center for Young Leaders in Africa, Miss Tinashe Mazala. Tinashe, welcome.
Hi, Camilla. Thank you for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. I was so excited even when you said that, you get to we get to come here and have this discussion simply because of the amount of work and even the impact that you have had through your many different endeavors regarding the people that you're serving through your products and services within your businesses, as well as the people that are being reached through the Center for Young Leaders in Africa and how many young leaders you're developing. So I can only imagine, if we're thinking of multiplicity, the amount of impact that's going on, because how many young leaders have you developed? How many lives are they impacting? That is definitely something that is amazing. So,
thank you.
Yeah, could you tell us more about you? Who's Tinashe?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer because I feel like sometimes we're constantly redefining, but like you said, I am an entrepreneur. I'm also a social entrepreneur through Center for Young Leaders in Africa and another upcoming organization. And I am passionate about sustainable development of Zambia as well as the continent of Africa. I'm passionate about mentorship and mentoring our younger generation and just helping people in a way that sometimes I feel I didn't receive help as I was growing up.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
I think that's me in a nutshell. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. The Tinashe Mazala that we have now was definitely the birth of different possibilities, stuff that we never thought was possible that are here. A huge reason of why this is called the Possibility series is my favorite quote from Mr. Nelson Mandela, who said, "It always seems impossible until it is done." So, tell us how, now Tinashe came to being, from somebody that you were as a young person to right now.
I think with a number of things, it's a combination of intentionality and accident or maybe just synchronicity.
Ooh, let's talk about it.
I know you talk about how you are the unlikely politician, and how you got into politics in a way that you didn't expect.
I think almost whimsical.
Exactly. For me, I think my political journey was a little bit more intentional, but it's almost accidental the way that things have ended up. So I think I've always been interested in leadership and politics and things like that. And I took a keen interest in just analyzing the nation's affairs and things like that. And so in the 2011 election, I was watching keenly and someone caught my eye, Elias Chipimo, the founder of NAREP, which is a political party that I'm a member of and I've been a member of for maybe the past 8 years. And so I took a keen interest. And I think the year after that, I started to analyze different political parties because I decided I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see. If I should not expect other people to do it, because I feel like sometimes we delegate the responsibility of change to other people and to leaders,
that is so true.
when we need to take up the mantle ourselves. So I read through the different manifestos of different political parties and NAREP stuck to me. But then it's not until 2015 that I joined NAREP and I was in the party, and in 2016 I almost left until I joined. I was part of this training program called Program for Young Politicians in Africa, where I met different people and I met my fellow co-founders of CYLA. And one of the things that led to starting CYLA was we all had problems across the board. I was almost leaving my political party because of these problems. And when I realized, okay, the options that I thought I was going to go to, they have the same problems. So I might as well be the change I want to see in my political party, but then also in a bigger way through an organization that can bring together everyone and deal with these problems in a larger sense. And I think since then, I've found myself growing within the political sphere in a way that I never intended, because I was I always intended to go into the party and help in the background. But sometimes leadership calls for you to be out of the background and into the limelight and representing.
Because your pull is not the limelight. Your pull is making a change.
Exactly.
And the frustration of not being able to do what you want to do.
Exactly.
That's just like, I'm just gonna have to go up front then.
Exactly. So if you had told me when I was a little girl that I was going to be the co-founder of an organization that was started primarily to help young people,
impacting hundreds of thousands,
I would not have believed it. I probably saw myself going down a more academic, legal type route, which now is not appealing to me anymore.
Like, is it like not appealing in any sense whatsoever,
No.
or it's only a little bit appealing?
And I think in any sense whatsoever. I think I like doing development work, and I've enjoyed just being able to work with people directly, and just I think being an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and I love, could you tell us what stage you were in your life when that realization dawned on you, when you got that impression in terms of, like, I'm not gonna directly ask your age,
sure,
but I'm gonna ask your age, like what stage of your life were you in? Were you like a high school student when you first realized that you could actually make a huge impact and change lives for people in a very unique way?
You know what?
Like, were you high school?
What's funny about my
college?
life is even from primary school, I sort of had a sense that I had a calling that was bigger than what I could envision, and it would have to do with serving people. And I think when you are younger, we have a very narrow view of what service looks like.
Absolutely.
And so I think it was about high school that I decided, okay, I'm going to go into politics, because politics is the nucleus of the decisions that are made. And because of that, I want to go in and directly affect this. And I tell this story a lot, but I don't think you've heard it. I was on a school trip. I was in grade 12, and it was a community service school trip. We were staying at an orphanage on the outskirts of Lusaka. And during that time, we had an encounter with this little boy who had just passed his grade 7 exam, and he was in grade 8. And he had something like over 850 points, and he was in like a rural school. So you could tell this guy is a genius. But two things: he was HIV positive, and he was from a very poor family. So they barely had enough food to eat. And he didn't even know if he was going to make it back to school the next term because his parents could not afford it. And this hit me hard because it was against the backdrop of being at a school where many of the nation's leaders' children were. And it just made me realize that there was an imbalance in the way that our nation's resources were distributed. And it made me want to be a part of that. There's something, and I still think about him regularly, because there's something that did to me. And it invoked something. A phrase I like to say is, there's certain people in this nation who won't have a certain quality of life unless I or you get your act together.
Absolutely.
And be there to represent them and help them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. And speaking to your point, what do you feel young people can do in order to actually get in on the action? What can we do to, especially, and most especially, since you had mentioned, or as you've mentioned before, Zambia does not have a lack of resources. We have a lack of resource management structures or strategies. So in as much as we would think that we're, it's not a poor country, it's underdeveloped. And but then what do you feel young people can do to take action in terms of shaping Zambia's economic future?
I think it starts with a lot of internal work, honestly speaking. We need to, first of all, take into account or analyze where our attention is as young people. Where's our attention? What is our focus on? We as a generation will probably know more about celebrities than we do about our nation's history, or we will know about our economy and things like that. And we are privileged enough to live in a generation where we have a wealth of knowledge on our fingertips through our phones. But what seems to get our attention the most is social issues.
Pop culture.
What did your maps do? What is Kim Kardashian doing? What happened with Kanye West? And look, I'm not here to tell you what to do with your attention, but if you were to do an audit of what gets the most of your time, and you find that it's things like this, then we really need to think about where we're headed as a nation. Another thing is, like I said, what we're doing with our time. We need to start to educate ourselves, inform ourselves. And then we also need to develop a certain culture of servitude. You know, a culture where we might not get anything back, but we will help anyway. I'm seeing a culture that is forming where people won't help you unless they're getting something in return. We need to get back to this.
Like, could that be entitlement or?
I think it's a combination of entitlement, lack, and need, because sometimes you don't want to waste your time because you need to provide for yourself.
Yeah.
And then there's also a certain greed that is forming. So we need to pay attention, particular attention to that. And we also just need to develop a mentality of being a problem solver. Because I think that's one of the things that, let's say, entrepreneurship teaches you. You need to be a problem solver. We need to think at problems through the lens of, what can I do about it? You know, one of the things that bothered me the most in post-election was, Bali will fix it. And it's like, good, we have a president who says he's interested in fixing the things. But while he's fixing it, what are you doing? Are you just waiting for him to do something
like
about it? Exactly.
And
that is my issue, is when it comes to leadership and democracy and things, we delegate responsibility and we feel like we should just sit behind. And we're not even holding these people accountable while they're fixing whatever. So I think as young people, we need to do a lot of internal work, transform ourselves, and then we will start to transform what is around us. So there's simple things like the common Zambian time phrase, we arrive to everything in Zambian time. Does it surprise us that even when it comes to development on the world stage, we're late, right? When in comparison. So it's these little mentalities that we have adopted that as the next generation of leaders, because each and every one of us is leaders, we need to transform. And it starts with just changing yourself, changing what you're feeding your mind and things like that.
All right, absolutely, absolutely. And seeing that entrepreneurship and even economic development revolves around the solution to problems. And you cannot say that Zambia has a lack of problems. In fact, we have them stacked as high as the clouds are.
But just like anywhere else.
Yeah, just like anywhere else, you know. And that's the thing. Problems even evolve because you could solve it in one way, but then the results of those equal and opposite actions are going to show up in another place. And it simply means that there will never be a lack of problems to solve. That also means there will never be a lack of money to make. It's simply because problems and the way life evolves simply means that there's always going to be a creation of more problems, or you could even say challenges. So this is an invitation to young people to say, look around you, think about the problems that you can solve. And if you can't solve them alone, think about the problems that you can solve as a collective.
Exactly.
And these things would actually benefit your pocket and also the nation's development.
Exactly.
So with regards to people becoming problem solvers, tell us about your journey. Like, what clicked in your mind to say that, okay, I want to be a part of the solution and not the problem? Might it have been a conversation? Might it have been a person or an event? I
think for me, it's a combination of things. I think it's some of the people I've interacted with. One of the key aspects is I'm a reader as well. So I think from very young, I think I've always read past my reading age. So there are certain books, like I remember, I think when I was about 13 years old, I read Poor Dad, Rich Dad. It's not a book that I would read now, or it's not necessarily a very exciting read, but there are certain concepts it's instilled in me as a young person. There's certain things it gave me an understanding of. And there's so many books that have impacted me in a huge way. And just also, I think I'm also privileged to just come from a family of strong women who have inspired me and, you know, have made me realize possibilities for myself as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking about possibilities, could you tell us some of the possibilities? What do you think would be possible if the young people of Zambia had to rise up to their potential, especially economically?
We would transform the continent. I think.
I love that.
Yeah, we honestly would, and we would honestly be one of the most developed countries in the world because we are so rich with resources. And when you look at our neighbors as well, they also have so many resources. Let's look at Congo, for example. Congo produces a good part of the world's cobalt, and lithium. And these are things that we need primarily in cell phones. In Zambia, we should have a cell phone factory on the copper belt because it's next to Congo, because also on the copper belt we have copper. But all we are doing right now is exporting the copper. So you can imagine if we began to, because I know Rwanda, for example, now has their own line of phones. If we started to produce that, or we came up with our own phone, there's so many things that would be, I think, transformed.
It would unlock so many
possibilities. So many possibilities. And
because the entire world needs phones. It's not just an Africa problem.
Exactly. But then also there are also so many other gadgets that have not even been thought of created. In the 1800s, people could have never envisioned that cell phones would be such an intricate part of our daily lives today. So it's also the possibilities of what we could think about. We need to enhance our imagination. And I think for me, that's one of the things I'm privileged to have learned from books. There's a way in which books unlock your imagination, and also just taking time, meditating, and also just having the right influences. Because, for example, if you're always watching things which tell you about theft and being attacked, it has a psychological effect on you. You become more prone and tuned to that.
Yeah.
So we also need, and this is why I love this possibility series, because if we can have more content like this for young people, letting them know your wildest dreams are possible, just think about the effect we could have on this generation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why for me it was so important that the Possibility series would be something of a communications campaign, just to see, like, young people, you are giants, but you're asleep. Wake up.
I love that.
Like, you are giants, but you are
I
asleep.
love that.
And the thing is that if we have ever doubted what young people could do, look at just this past election.
Exactly.
Young people are the ones who changed the tide.
Exactly.
And I actually almost feel very sad, especially in Zambia, that we had lost that momentum, because there was, something. However, it has trickled on in a very different way, but still a very positive light, because after this there has been like a wave of Zambia Kuchalo. And look at the young Zambians making so many waves across. I was so proud with the Commonwealth Games and how Zambia emerged top in swimming and so many other categories. I was so excited. Digindaba Jona Buyoya winning the Komla Dumo Award. Looking at the success of Sampa the Great and so many other young Zambians that are making strides across the nation. I really hope that we can maintain a sort of positive momentum.
And I love it because seeing those things shows possibilities for you.
Absolutely.
It really does. And this is why we need to just open our minds, and maybe also we need to do more work on us tuning into these people, the people that are showing us possibilities that we didn't think were possible. One of the most heartbreaking things about growing up in Zambia, like in the 90s, there was this thing of people looking at America and the West and adopting and borrowing that culture. The time has come for us to first of all establish, let's do some sort of audit on our culture, because there's the different types of culture in Africa. So we have our colonial, pre-colonial culture, African culture. Then we were colonized. So there's certain parts of our culture which we've adopted from the British.
Absolutely.
So let's do an audit. What are we keeping? What are we taking away? Because I like to look at us as the future ancestors. And as future ancestors of Zambia and of Africa, what are we doing for the next generation? What blueprint? When they say they're carrying out the culture of their ancestors, what are they carrying out? Are they carrying out this Zambian time lateness thing? Are they carrying out this system of complaining but not doing anything about it? Or are they carrying out this Zambia Kuchalo that we're seeing? Are they carrying out development and action and, let's say, sustainable development, caring for the environment? So we also need to be really intentional as future ancestors as what we are leaving for the coming generations.
That is so true, because even one of the most impactful statements of my life, and I happened to read this. It was, I think, an intro into a book, and it said, it's by John F. Kennedy, and it says, we did not inherit our country from our ancestors, but we borrowed it from our children. That for me was so deeply impactful, because if we're gonna be the ancestors, look at what we have been lent.
Exactly.
And the thing about debt and lending is that it gives you a burden of responsibility, a burden to pay back. And also just think about it, 4 generations from now, that would be your seed. that would be looking up at you and saying, what did you do with what you had?
Exactly.
And what realities would you like to leave for them? And as much as politics is a sort of very unfiltered space, you know, there's very low barriers to entry within politics.
No, and
So
there really are. It's true.
It invites
It's true.
everybody in.
Yeah.
So anybody and everybody can come in. But then I called it the possibility series because one place that any possibility can be made is the space of entrepreneurship. It's the space of economics. You can join there and make something of yourself without necessarily having to go into places that might be even extremely uncomfortable for you. And Zambia being as underdeveloped as it is, I feel like it is absolutely necessary for young people to join the conversation up on that end. Just be like, look, from where you are, you can do this, even if it does not look the same as what it looks like for politicians or people that are in, you know, completely different spaces. And with the sort of resources that we have, I'm told Zambia has 80% arable land.
Yes.
And look at our weather pattern. We could literally be Africa's food basket. Somebody went as far as saying we could be the world's food basket.
We could.
And I'm just looking at it in terms of that is a huge possibility for us to be somebody, for us to be the sort of country that others look up to.
Exactly.
Because we have always looked up to, you know, America, you know, the Western countries, and we're now looking up to Rwanda. But then just imagine that Zambian pride.
And that could be Zambia. And as future ancestors, we can make this possible. Because there's a Henry Ford quote which says, whether you believe you can or you can't, you are right. So we need to gain this confidence, and this is what I love this possibility series, because it just lets you know because think, and this is why I say, look at a TV 300 years ago. You told people you could look in, they would think it's madness, or they would think it's some sort of sorcery, right? But then let's start to believe beyond our wildest dreams and imagination and actually start to work towards it. And like you were saying earlier, there's this momentum that came with the election. Let's use that momentum to go and hold the leaders we voted into power accountable. One key part of being an entrepreneur is the financing. We do not have favorable financing options, particularly for young people.
That is very
true. Are we
true.
taking this up with our leaders?
That is
There's
very
certain
true.
barriers to participation that you face, blockages within the system. You try and do something, and for months, people are sitting on it because they want a little something. If you don't, are we taking up these things with our leaders? These are the things that we need to believe that it is possible to live in a Zambia where things work. Things just work. You can go and take your NRC. You don't have to be queuing for hours and hours on end, because it's such a simple process.
Even with the onset of digitization.
Exactly.
Come on.
You know, there's so many things, and we need to believe that these things are a possibility and take it up with the people who are responsible for these things. You said, I love the quote, because that's one of my favorite quotes about how we borrow from the future generation.
Yeah.
So we need to start to live in a way that reflects that, honestly speaking. And there's a quote I like as well, which says, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Are we intentionally creating the type of future we want to see? That's a question.
Absolutely. There is a sort of shame around being wealthy. You know, there's a sort of shame, you know,
it must be associated with witchcraft or something
Satanism, or something dark. And
why?
We hardly see wealth as something good. And I feel like until we start feeling good about wealth, there might also be certain barriers. There's certain possibilities that will not be available to us. It will not be able
I
to
know
happen.
You and I both attended the Money Summit, and there was something that was spoken about how money has an energy. So if your energy around money and wealth is very distant and hesitant, why are we surprised that as a country, because, you know, something I like to say, and some people find it offensive, but it's true. Zambia right now is a John Soliovwali. We wait for the rest of the world to give us aid, to fund our projects, and we're comfortable with it. We need to get to a point and just say, okay, guys, now I need to create wealth for myself. I now need to have the capacity to finance some of these things that I'm doing. I want to stand on my own. And if people help us out, well and good. But we need to stop being comfortable with this thing of just receiving, like you say, like we are a victim. It's like, yes, we've been through so many bad things.
And we need to acknowledge it.
Exactly.
We need to heal from it.
And also place the right
forward.
laws and systems in place to prevent them from happening. Because I feel like we don't do that. So we need to be having the right conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so in closing, are there any last words? Please speak into the camera for a young Zambian out there, or especially regarding how to get out of a victim mentality. Like, what would you tell a younger you that was far more fearful, far more relaxed, far less vigilant? What would you tell young Tinashe?
I would tell young Tinashe the best is yet to come, and continue on your path, continue to own your truth. You're bold, keep up with that boldness, keep up with your passion for the country of Zambia, but then be a lot more intentional. Make sure that you're doing the work on transforming you as a person and ensuring that that transformation is reflected around you. And just also to the young Zambians, I would like for you to become more vigilant and to begin to participate in your community's affairs and in your nation's affairs. You're not too young. In the same way that you always find yourselves tweeting and commenting on the latest thing, I think develop that when it comes to the economy, develop that when it comes to issues of sustainable development and issues on our culture. Be diligent, because you are the future ancestors, and act accordingly, act in your power. Like, read a lot more. Read, if maybe reading is not your thing, audio books, there's YouTube, there's so many things that are going to educate you. There's multiple ways to gain an education, because you might go to university, graduate with your degree, but there's a certain education you lack because maybe you are only specialized in marketing. Learn about your continent, learn about your country, learn about the economy, and just, I think that's what I would say in summation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming through. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been, absolutely, it's been my absolute pleasure having you here. And thank you for everything that you've done to contribute to this topic, and including in the way you live your life. Like, it's very brave, and I'm sure it incurs a lot of sacrifices. Lord knows politics has sacrifice, especially if you're young, and more especially if you're a woman. Yes.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Possibility Series. We're giving you keys to unlocking, number 1, the economic future of this nation, and number 2, your participation. So get out there, participate, and serve. Thank you very much.